Well, welcome everyone back to the Woodard Report podcast. I am just pinching myself here because I'm so excited to have April Rinne joining us today on the podcast. April, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Heather. What a joy to be here.
Oh, well, I'm so excited. So, for those of you that have not heard of April Rinne, you are going to absolutely want to run out and buy her book, which is absolutely amazing. We're going to be talking about it today. So, who is she? She is a trusted advisor, speaker, inventor. You're also a Harvard educated lawyer, global development executive, adventurer, been to over 100 countries. And an insatiable handstander. And I want to hear all about that because I think that's absolutely amazing. You are ranked as one of the top 50 female futurists in the world and a young global leader in the World Economic Forum, a member of the Silicon Guild and Thinkers 50 Radar, which sounds really intriguing to me. I have no idea what that is. You'll have to tell me that too.
I can explain, yeah.
And I'm also the best-selling author of Flux, 8 Superpowers for Thriving in Constant Change. So welcome, April.
Thank you, Heather. Listening to that bio sometimes I'm like, who is that person? But it is true. That is a legit bio. And the handstands, we can come back to them later. I've been doing them since I was a child, but these days I think of them as a really lovely metaphor for seeing differently and changing your perspective, which is actually a lot of what, as you know, my book is about.
Yes, it is. No, I love that. And I was also a handstander back in the day. I don't think I could do a handstand today, but I think it's really cool that you can.
Yeah, no, there was a point at which I looked around and all the friends I was doing them with as a kid, as a gymnast, they weren't doing them anymore. So I think really it's a testament, I think, to just practice and a little bit of longevity. But it's quite funny because I say to myself, I'm too old to be doing them. And then people are like, no, you're not. You're never too old. So my goal is to, live to be 100, I hope, and to do a handstand on my 100th birthday. I am going far afield from what we are here to talk about today, but it's a good dream to have.
No, it is. And I think, definitely keeping doing things. I don't know if I said that right, that you were doing when you were younger is so important. And, I'm in my mid 50s now, and I find that picking up things I used to do now is so much fun. So, yeah, you have to keep exercising that part of your brain or your body or whatever it is. So I love that.
Yeah.
So let's dig into Flux. So I am a huge proponent of change leadership. I think that, after reading your book, you talk about the different types of people and their approach to change. I'm definitely one of those that has always embraced change. And one of the things I loved about in your book, you talk about where that comes from, the beliefs that we have when we're young and how that kind of shapes our whole outlook on change, and that is changeable. And that's what your whole book is about. So can you talk about a little bit about that and how people kind of react to change and where that comes from their origin story?
Yeah. So our origin story around change, and I would say more broadly today, change and uncertainty and the unknown and what I call, a world in flux and a future in flux, and it's all in flux, and oh my goodness, which is rattling a lot of people today. And I'll just make a quick side note here. When I say flux, I mean something more than just change. It's that constant, relentless, never ending sense of like everything's changing all at once, right? But let's go back to just this basic idea of change. Something was and it is no longer, or something wasn't and now it becomes to be, right? So much of how we relate to change and think about change and show up or not for change, those attitudes and behaviors are formed generally quite young in life. The experiences we have as a child, and that could be everything from moving to a new place, or parents getting divorced or married again or staying together, or having best friends that you were with for a long time or not. You think about these very simple things and we don't talk about them. They happen to us. We absorb them. We are socialized, and we learn from our parents and teachers and community members and caretakers, whoever they might be. And then we grow up, right? And that's all fine and well. But a lot of those early experiences have a profound effect on how we come to see change. And they don't show up on our resume, they don't show up on our LinkedIn profiles. They're typically not part of a hiring process, and yet they shape so much else. And so, this is just a piece of what my work and book is about, but I like this kind of grounding because we find ourselves in today's world in flux, or you're in the workplace and you have a challenge with a colleague or something like that, and you're like, why is that person overreacting? Why is that person throwing sand in the wheels? And there may be a very legitimate reason to do so in a corporate setting. These days, often it's like someone feels their job is at threat, so they're going to throw sand in the tires. Okay, you can understand that, but there are many different ways that people could react or respond to that change. And whether or not someone throws sand in the tires often goes back to stuff they learned long before that job, long before that place of employment. And so I'm really trying to help people, teams, leaders, organizations unpack what I call that relationship to change so that they can show up better for it moving forward. Because as we were talking about, and we're going to talk more about, there is a lot of change today, and there is more of it ahead, and more uncertainty. And that's not a judgment or a criticism. That's just an observation about the world. But if we're living in a world in which there is more change and uncertainty ahead, we have to get a lot better at how we show up for it. And the way that you get better showing up for it is to better understand how you ended up where you are today.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of shadow work in my own life, looking at those hard moments in my life and trying to understand why I react to certain things the way that I do. And I think that kind of speaks into what you're talking about. And really what it comes down, I think, is fear. Right? It's the fear of the thing you don't want to look at. It's the fear of the unknown, the fear of how do I get beyond this point, and how am I going to be able to even handle all of the change? Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the strategy? I mean, you have your 8 superpowers, but
And we'll
a
get
lot
to
of us
those.
feel that way.
Yeah, and you really nailed it, Heather. What I've done over the years, and I mean, probably transcends the time we have for this podcast today, but really understanding when we say change, it also means more than one thing, right? Because we love it and we hate it, we embrace it and we resist it. It's awesome and it's horrible. Like, hold on, there's more that meets the eye than just one word, change. And so really better understanding those dynamics of change. Because, for example, you've got the pace of change. You've got change that you do or don't control. You've got this sense of not knowing, like different dynamics, but they're all related to change. And I think we're going to come back to some of this when I talk about the superpowers. But in terms of trying to understand what are the filters through which we see all change. We don't see it the same way, but what are the filters that can better help us understand how we see it? And so I mentioned one of them already. I love that you mentioned you love change, and I will challenge you a little bit on this, that most humans, we love the changes we choose. We love changes we opt into. Like, that could be a new job, it could be a new relationship, it could be a new restaurant to try. Like, most humans, we love those changes. The changes that most humans don't like are the ones we didn't see coming. The ones that, knock you sideways on a Tuesday afternoon, the changes that disrupt your plans, right? Now, that's more what we're talking about here. And yes, we can learn. What I help people do is learn to appreciate and embrace even those changes that we generally, quote, don't like, as opportunities to learn and grow and improve. And that is at the heart of this flux mindset, this that we're going to talk more about as well. But I just want to kind of underscore that, like, changes you love, changes you hate, like, there are ways you can see. And if you go back and think about what are the changes I love the most, usually there's some sense, maybe not control, but some sense of agency, in that
Mhm.
you had the ability to help make a change happen. Like, it was a good thing, like you had a role in it. I'm still looking for the person who's like, that thing that just flipped my life upside down, like, hooray, right? Maybe they're out there. I would love to meet them. But I share this just as kind of that big picture framing. And similarly, you've nailed it. In my work, and again, at this point, Yes, I'm trained as a lawyer and I'm worked in the investment community and so forth, but I've worked all these 100 plus countries. I've worked in a lot of different cultures. I've worked with a lot of different sectors and stakeholders. And what I love, one of the things I love most about what I do is that I just started seeing patterns. What we're talking about here isn't about one sector. It's not about one place or people in the world. Every single person, every single culture on this planet has something to offer to this conversation about change. And we can learn a lot from each other. And also, we have something to contribute. So it's kind of a celebration. We're all better at change in some ways than we think, and we're worse at it than we would like to believe. So back to the hope and fear. In all of my travels and work and cross-cultural, all of that, one of the factors that matters more than any other, no matter who you are or where you live, is whether you see a given change from a place of hope or fear. And that's just hope or fear. And because to your point, the fear is what shuts us down. And also, like change, it's not like there's one kind of fear. You can be, fear of the unknown. You can have fear of what others might think. You can have fear of social norms, but these fears, they reside deep within us. But fear, it shuts us down. It makes us anxious, it makes us panic. But actually, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but I've done a deep dive into how does the brain handle all of this? Fear reduces your short-term memory, which is your ability to think and be present, just to be in the moment. But it also reduces your peripheral vision. And by that, I mean your ability to see the bigger picture, including what you might be missing, right? And that is fascinating to me because when we default into a place of fear about a given change, we're cutting ourselves off at our knees, both in terms of we become less able to react or respond responsibly to the change that's there, but we fail to see the broader context within which it's happening, where often there are other opportunities for learning and growth to be had.
I love that, and that resonates so much because if you are, it's almost like the chicken and the egg,
Yeah.
right? Right? Like if you have the fear, you don't realize you have the fear, right? But if you can stop and recognize how I'm feeling in my body, how am I feeling about the situation, and then open your mind to it, then you can start to see the possibilities. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Totally, totally. And I want to be clear too. Like I said, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm also not a therapist. I'm coming
Yeah.
at this from a very practical layperson view. I've worked in not every sector, but because flux is everywhere, I've just had this broad exposure. And these are just very human dynamics and dimensions of change. And so I love telling people like, it's you're not abnormal. This is totally, and even these reactions, some of them, I mean, historically, they're healthy. That's what helped us survive, right? But back in cave people times, when you could, possibly be like chased by a tiger, the challenge we face today is that, and we can maybe get into this if you want, but with the pace of change and social media and devices, and like we can be attached to information 24/7 these days to a degree that we couldn't be before. And as a result, we're bombarded by what's changing in the world. And it's very easy if you don't have these filters in place to just, in effect, put yourself under the bus even before you've had breakfast with the overwhelm of change. And so that's also where the fear and anxiety can kick in. But to your point, if we become aware of what those dynamics are, it's not, that's not the silver bullet or the magical solution in and of itself. But if we become aware that we actually do have control and agency to pause, say what's really going on, what's rational and irrational here, that's the first step to practicing showing up for whatever it is that's changing better. And I'll probably harp a little bit on this today, but this idea of everything we're talking about here today is a practice. And I think of it as a leadership practice for you leading yourself, but also for anyone who's leading teams. And so the way you get better at this is to practice it. And also to your point, this sense of like exactly the thing we don't want to have to face. We want to deny it and put it off and pretend it's not there. That's actually, we need to head straight into that to practice it. And that is how we get better at getting through it and better at seeing change in its full light.
So, with our accounting profession,
Hmm.
we're facing so much change right now. We're facing artificial intelligence, right? We're facing the staffing crisis that we've had because we're starting to see our populations actually starting to kind of plateau and go the opposite way that it was. So we're looking at how do we staff our new staff accountants in our practices. We're looking at the consolidation of firms. So the larger firms are buying the smaller firms. So the market's becoming a very different place. So there, like, we certainly are in a state of flux. I would say that is almost unlike anything we've ever seen. Can you talk a little bit about how do we get here?
Yeah, so this is a great point, and I'm often asked, like, in that sense of, it relates to what I was saying earlier, just very briefly. But this idea of, is there more change today than in the past? It's like there's a lot of it, and I think we could just leave it at that. We can't travel back 200 years to like be like, can we do a comparison?
Right.
There was a lot of change back then. What's interesting, there is a tendency for every single generation to believe that nothing is changing as fast as the present. And I do like to remind people, like, your great grandparents might have lived through two world wars, electrification, the internet, like massive changes, right? But what is true, and I mentioned this earlier, and then I'll come back to accounting because I have a couple, well, I'll come back to it in a minute. What is true is that the average person is far more aware of what's changing than ever before. And that is unique. And so, thanks again to technologies, we can know almost immediately when disaster strikes halfway around the world, right? We've never before had effectively free, instantaneous access to all the news you could possibly dream of. In the past, that would have taken hours, if not days or even weeks to know, giving your brain more time to process what was happening, right? So our brains just aren't designed to handle necessarily this much information. They get kind of hijacked and we shut down and we can't process. So I always like to bring that one up. Now I've had the honor and the joy of working within accounting and accountancy professions quite a bit in recent years. And I can say this as a lawyer as well. I can poke some fun at myself. And I'm a erstwhile lawyer. I don't practice anymore, but I have that training. And lawyers and accountants are among the two vocations that generally have even harder times with change. And I say this very respectfully because accountants opted in, chose a vocation in which there is an answer. There is a number in the spreadsheet, right? Lawyers opted in, there is a rule, there is a precedent, there is an answer, right? And I respect that immensely. But what it challenges, where it creates additional challenges, is when you're trained to look for the answer and there is a right and wrong, or a better and a worse. And here you are in a world in which there are no easy answers. No number you put in that spreadsheet is going to find the peace of mind that you're looking for, nor is it going to tell you what to do. And so I just want to have a moment of like empathy for this vocation, which is a little bit different than, I work again across sectors, someone who's working, say, in HR or career development, someone who's working in, leadership and talent development. Like those are imperfect vocations as well, but there's a kind of, there's not a number that's going to get you the answer. And so in that regard, take a deep breath. Like anyone who's listening, give yourself, some grace, and then say, all right, so if it is true that the world I thought I was going to live in looks different than the world that I seem to be living in today, what are the skills, what are the practices I need to be more future fit, more future ready? And that comes down to this mindset that we were talking about, the flux mindset, which is seeing the ability to see all change. So the good and the bad, the stuff that you pick, but especially the stuff that you didn't pick, that you didn't see coming, that you don't control. It's the ability to see all of it as opportunities to learn and grow and improve. So there's that piece, but then you're like, okay, I can have this mindset, but that doesn't just drop from the sky. Like, I have to practice, I have to put it into action. How do I do that? And that takes us into these practices, these 8 flux superpowers, as I like to call them, because who doesn't want superpowers? Each of which relates to a different dynamic of change. And, we can go through some of those if you'd like.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. I know you talk about, is towards the end of the book, you talk about the portfolio career, which I thought was wonderful because I feel like as a profession, accountants are so ready for this portfolio career because we've worked with all different types of businesses. We've had to solve all kinds of different problems. From helping a client, giving marketing advice. We're not marketers, but in the financial statements, we can see what part of their, what is their spend for marketing and how is that affecting, gross revenue. So we can start to give them some advice. We are so poised to become you know, um, portfolio
Career
people.
portfolioists.
Yes, we're portfolios.
Portfolioists.
I love it. I
That's
love it.
interesting. It's a word we've had to come up with. And I
Yes.
love that you bring this up, Heather, because you know, my book has been around for several years now. And when I wrote it, I really wanted to write something that was going to become more valuable with time, that didn't have like an expiry date. I wrote it well before the onslaught of AI. And guess what? I've never thought that like this idea of the career portfolio or a portfolio career, and I'll come back to that in a moment. It has actually never been more relevant, not just as a different way of seeing your career, but frankly as an essential to thrive in the future of work. Because so much about how we work and how work gets done is changing with AI, obviously, but different forces as well. And so I love when like this thesis I had around like there's more change and uncertainty ahead, not less. It is frankly playing out even better than I thought. That doesn't mean easier. It just means there's more and more heft and relevance and value of developing these superpowers. So, this idea of a career portfolio, and among the 8 superpowers, I can also say that this one is unique because it's the only one that focuses really on career, professional change, that sort of thing. The other 7 are much broader. They're like change that could happen in your personal life or in society. This one is really about your career. And it basically says that in a world of work that is uncertain and constantly changing, to see your career not as a ladder to climb or a straight line to pursue in one direction, which is up, see it as a portfolio that you can curate, like an artist or an investor or an executive would. And back to these ideas, these scripts, these things we've been taught of like, this is how the world works, that for most people, myself included, we were raised to think of our careers in a pretty linear fashion, right? You're going to study hard and get good grades. You're going to hopefully go to university if you can. You're going to study something employable. You're going to get a job and do that job well and work your way up to the highest rung on the ladder you can, and then you're going to retire, right? Linear one direction. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is not a criticism. It's just the fact that this ladder, it still exists, but it's only one of many different ways that people can create successful, rewarding careers these days. And frankly, it's becoming a much smaller piece of a bigger career pie. And the ladder, some people would say in many ways today with AI, it's kind of listing. It might even be breaking, but it's not just the technology piece or just AI. It's also that company policies are changing, right? The benefits of being a lifer, like there aren't that many lifers anymore. And young people certainly don't see their career as staying in one place. And many people just don't want to be on a ladder anymore. They don't, certainly not a ladder that someone else built. They want to be able to design their own ladder or their own shape or their own, if you will, metaphor. And so portfolio is a much broader conception of what your career looks like, the shape of it, how it evolves and advances, because everyone wants to advance for sure. They just don't see that happening only on a ladder. And it's also a much broader conceptualization of your skills. And it's not just the skills that are on your resume. It is every skill you have that adds value to society. And if we take this broader lens, you were saying, the marketing piece, your accountants who are doing marketing, um, anyone who's in any kind of client relationships, skills like empathy, skills like holding space for someone when they're having a bad day, like these are invaluable skills that we don't historically focus on that much. It's not like a career credential, but more and more particularly when it comes in an era of AI, if technology is going to be doing more, the humanity becomes that invaluable addition that we provide. And so I'll pause there because I think there's more we want to duck into here. But changing, when you start shifting, actually, there's one other small thing I want to say. And I worry a little bit because this might sound a bit harsh, but I do like to remind people that insofar as you have a job and you might love your job and excel at your job, if someone else gave you that job is always at risk of being taken away. Not because you're a bad person, not because you did anything wrong. The nature of the world, the nature of change and flux. Jobs are at risk from time to time. They have been throughout history. What's beautiful about a portfolio is that your portfolio is yours forever. No one can take it away from you, and no one can fire you from it. It is yours forever. Now, you're responsible for it, but you have 100% control over what you do with it. And what I find is in this era in which people are very worried about their jobs, not only does a portfolio approach as a lens become more valuable, it also can be a source of empowerment and confidence. And like, there is one thing you can rely on here, and it's your unique set of skills and all the different ways you can deploy them in today's world and workplace that is changing.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that did really resonate with me when I was
Mhm.
going through it. Let's talk about another one of the superpowers that you talk about in the book, which is also really important and is really difficult to do today. And that is running slower.
Yeah, yeah. So where do we want to start? Well, this, as I mentioned, each of the 8 superpowers bolts onto a different dynamic of change. And this one very much is about the pace of change. And I will admit, I'm sure there are at least a few listeners right now being like, is this person born under a rock? Like, run slower? Has she looked outside? The pace of change is fast and getting faster. I can't run slower. And I want to just say, hold on a minute, because that's exactly what we're getting at here. And this also starts to relate to the changes that we do and don't control, and how we show up and how we react and respond. And so when you think about it, when I say running slower, just to be clear, I do not mean stop. I do not mean be lazy. You'll note I said run. I'm talking about how do we get to live and lead and work and thrive and lead at a pace that is sustainable, that allows you to see and get clarity on what's really happening, what really matters, and make sure that if you're going to run, make sure you're running in the right direction. Because a lot of what's happening right now, a lot of people, the pace of change is faster, faster, faster in the outside world. We're running as fast as we can to keep up with it. And yet we believe that the pace of change is going to be faster tomorrow, faster the day after that, faster, faster, faster. And I encounter people every single day who are exhausted. And if you think about this, just, brain experiment for a minute here. You're exhausted today running as fast as you can. And yet somehow you're supposed to run even faster tomorrow and faster for that, faster for that. Like, that is a system, that is a setup that breaks. At some point, you can't keep it up. And that either means burnout individually, or that means, some kind of bigger crisis at a company. But also what it means, so you can think of this in terms of just your own ability to flourish. It keeps you from being your best you, but also it's when we're running fast, that's when we often make mistakes. That's when we don't see an opportunity that would have been perfect for us. We just ran right by it. We don't see important details, nuance, things in relationships. We don't see what really matters. We're just racing to get to the next thing. So when I say run slower, what I'm talking about is that this is how you deal with an accelerating pace of change. It's about your inner pace. So in the outside world, the pace of change, like I said, does appear to be getting faster, faster, faster outside. And you don't control that. I don't control that. No one controls that. The way you deal with that is understanding and knowing and practicing and being able to slow your inner pace of change, which is, can you actually pause and take a beat and understand what's going on and recognize that, you might have 1,000 things on your to-do list. They're not all equally important. They're not all tigers chasing you. Can you actually develop that practice? And so And the faster the outside world becomes, the more important, the more essential it is to better regulate and, downshift, if you will, your inner pace of change.
Yeah, no, that also really resonated with me. And one of the things that I've done, you talked about your handstands. One of the things that I do that most people think is really silly is I look for 4-leaf clovers.
I love it.
And that's how I slow myself down is I can go out in nature, just in my backyard or wherever I am. And it's meditative. It really is. It's just looking. And the other thing I love about it, because I studied a little bit of neuroscience, because I was trying to figure out for over 50 years, not to go into my whole story, but over 50 years, I wanted to find a 4-leaf clover and I never did.
Oh,
And one day I told myself that they were all 4-leaf clovers. I just started saying in my head, every clover is a 4-leaf clover. April, within 2 weeks, I found my first 4-leaf clover.
I,
And
I love
I
it.
and now I find them all the time. And it's so magical and it's such a little thing. And, some people think I'm crazy and wasting my time, but it is so special to me when I'm out there in nature, feeling the sun, looking at the ground, and I find that 4-leaf clover. It's like a spark. And that is the way that I slow down. And
I
it really is magical.
Well, I love it. And for each person, there are different ways to slow down. Time in nature is a fabulous one. I often like to remind people if they keep a to-do list, start a not to-do list. That's another favorite one. And also, I realize, this is a group of business owners and professionals. Organizationally, it's also a call to action to take a really hard look at, do you have early detection systems and signals in your organization to make sure that people aren't running constantly too fast? Obviously there will be sprints from time to time. We have projects that are due. The challenge is when it's never ending and there's no end sight. And by the time we get to burnout or mistakes, it's too late. And so to help people, and it might be just encouraging people to have, again, time in nature. Oftentimes it's breath work. There's a really long list of ways that people work that work for different people to slow down. But it's the beautiful thing is our ability to run fast when it really matters hinges on our ability to run slow. It's like when you charge a battery, right? You can't run full stop on a full battery. But what I love is exactly what you've called out is when we learn to slow down and to run slower and to take that beat, you start seeing, frankly, magic and miracles and 4-leaf clovers everywhere. And it's a great metaphor, I think, more broadly for where we find not just the beauty and the joy in life, but also the really new ideas, the real sources of innovation and wisdom and frankly, the kind of success that defines one's legacy at the end of the day. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, this has been incredible, April, and I can't wait to meet you in real life
yeah.
in just a few months at our Scaling New Heights conference. And you're going to be doing our Tuesday afternoon keynote where you're going to be talking about the 8 superpowers in flux. So listeners, if you want to learn more about how you can incorporate this, definitely go check out April's book. It's fantastic. Best book I've read in a really long time. So thank you. And come to Scaling New Heights in June, and you can hear April speak and possibly even meet her at a book signing. So, April, thank you so much. This has been
Oh,
fabulous.
my pleasure. It is interesting. I hear strange new world. I'm like, yep, that is a world in flux. So it is
Absolutely
my absolute joy to be here. I can't wait to meet you and others in June. And thank you for your time. This has been an absolute delight.
wonderful. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time on the Woodard Report podcast.